Hey, what's up everyone? There isn't too many movies to talk about right now, so I figured I'd go back and watch some of the classics that I've actually never seen. I've never seen Scream 1 or 2. I saw 3 at home and 4 in theaters, so I kind of seen them all out of order, so I just figured I'd rewatch 3 and 4 and see 1 and 2 for the first time. So I'm not going to go too in-depth with these films, but I'm giving you my thoughts, my gripes, my opinions, and maybe talk about the future of the franchise. So this ranking is going to be going from best to worst, and starting off for me, just like a lot of other fans of the franchise, number 1 goes to the first Scream film. All of them are directed by Wes Craven, and it stars Neve Campbell, Jamie Kennedy, Matthew Lillard, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, and a ton of other actors and actresses. Hell, Drew Barrymore's even in this for a little bit. Now, before I let you guys know my thoughts on this one, before I saw any of the Scream films, I actually saw the Scary Movies first. You know, the movies that parody the Scream films. And so, I was familiar with Ghostface. I was familiar with his voice, Sidney. And so I was at least able to pick up on the references. But I feel like such an idiot that I met Matthew Lillard at a convention a year or so ago, and I loved him in Scooby-Doo and all this other stuff he did, but I never saw him in this movie. This is now my favorite movie that he's in. He's such a great actor in this. And also, I'm not going to be summarizing this film, but in a nutshell, a bunch of teenagers are in a town, killer starts slashing them one by one, and the killer's revealed at the end. That's basically the plot of all these movies, give or take some little arcs here or there. The tone was actually a little bit more serious for this one than the other films. I mean, the opening just draws you in right away. There's a little bit of a light vibe to it, and there's some cool horror trivia when Ghostface is talking to Drew Barrymore over the phone. But you see her boyfriend slaughtered and his intestines are all hanging out. I was like, oh cool, this is awesome. So I was expecting a lot more crazy kills in this movie, but I didn't really get them. I mean, there was a kill later in the film where the girl gets crushed by the garage door. That was cool, but I kind of had a hard time separating the comedic stuff from the serious stuff in this film. Like, the girl's trying to get out of the garage through the little cat door. Like, the idea is already hilarious, so when she died, I was like, okay. But seeing how the franchise went after this movie, I can see it wasn't all supposed to be too serious. And yikes, David Arquette, I know he's supposed to be like this rookie cop, mid-20s, early 20s or whatever. Dude, he's such a terrible actor. Oh my god, his delivery was god-awful. His dialogue was god-awful. Like, every time I saw him flirt or do anything, man, I just cringed. The ending was classic, though. Matthew Lillard revealed to be the killer, 1 of 2. I thought there was only going to be 1 for this movie, but hey, it was a cool hook. I liked it. Neve Campbell completely embodies this female hero in this, and she's definitely one of the best Scream queens in horror history. If I was any character in this original Scream film, I would definitely be Jamie Kennedy with the obscure movie references and the obsession with cinema. I mean, come on. Speaking of him, did anyone else get a kick out of this at the party scene where it's him and like 10 people just crowded around this little like 19 or 21 inch tube TV? Man, times have changed. If I were to rate this movie, I would probably rate it an 8.5 out of 10. Alright, number 2. I know this is going to shock some of you, but number 2, I picked Scream 4. Now, this is the one I saw originally in theaters, but I had no clue about the other movies besides my vague memories of Scream 3 when I saw it. It stars Rory Culkin, Hayden Panettiere, Neve Campbell's returning, Courtney Cox, David Arquette. All those guys are back. Emma Roberts and tons of other up-and-coming actresses and actors that you all know and love today. Same plot as before, really. Ghostface is back and he's slashing up all these other people. I think what I loved about this Scream film more than the others is it does have a comedic tone to it, but it knows when to place the comedic stuff in there, so I can really buy the serious stuff when they're trying to be serious. Hell, Dewey and Gale, those characters are married in this film because they hinted at that at the end of the third one. But even Dewey, David Arquette, I can take him seriously for the most part. He's still shitty at aiming and he gets his ass beat at the very end of the movie by a bedpan, but for the most part, I can take him seriously. His acting is slightly better. I'm not saying he's great in this film, but his acting is slightly better than the other 3. The kills are more brutal in this one. I mean, the one girl in the beginning, her intestines are hanging out. The room's just freaking covered in blood. Anthony Anderson gets stabbed right in the head with a knife, and he's like, He's like basically shaking because all his nerves are messed up, and he's like, he can't see really. He's just swinging and punching at the air, like doesn't know what to do. And someone gets dropped out of a window, just lands right on a car. Like, they definitely revved it up a bit. The two main suspects for the killers are Rory Culkin and the other actor, I don't remember his name, but they're talking about if Ghostface were to evolve himself, he would film his kills. And Rory Culkin's buddy in this movie films and vlogs his whole life, so you think it's these two dudes from the start. 4 movies in, you would think Sidney and all these other characters would carry guns and other weapons on them at all times now. Come on, he just has a knife and that's it. He might wear a bulletproof vest, but shoot for the head. And I love how the tech is evolving now in this one. There's a movie club. They have Stab Fest where they show all these films from the previous movies that they've shown. And one of the cool things is you can just download an app to your phone to disguise yourself as Ghostface, so there's a lot of fake outs at certain times in this. Although the one thing I didn't like about Scream 4 is the one thing that I hate about all the other ones. They try to pay homage to the ending that happened in every film, like the killer's dead. Psych, they come back for a last, like, huzzah, and then they get shot. And that's it. Like, come on. It's like, it's so predictable. Granted, like, one of the killers, Emma Roberts, came back at the end in the hospital, so that was a little bit more intense, but yeah. And one final thought, the last kill was cool, where Sidney was just, like, clear and fries Emma Roberts' brain. Yes. So this one I would rate a 7 out of 10. Coming in at number 3 would be Scream 2. Now, Sidney and the gang were in high school in the first film. In the second one, they're in college. They have this cinema club that talks about horror movies and reboots. All while there was a movie called Stab made after the events of the first Scream film based off of Gale Weathers' book. So the pluses were the tone was more comedic in this one, but not as comedic as the third one. We'll talk about that later. Jamie Kennedy, I loved him until he died. He should have died in a cooler way. There was a lot of up-and-coming actors and actresses in this film too. Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jerry O'Connell. Hell, Timothy Olyphant was in this movie. It's got a good cast, and they're all decent actors for the most part. I don't really have much to say about Scream 2. I mean, David Arquette's still a crappy actor in this one. At least they had some good continuity, where after the events of the first film, he's limping now in this one, so props to the continuity team for that. There's also a Matthew Lillard cameo in here. Matthew Lillard is actually like one of the background dudes at the party, even though I believe he's uncredited. The killers are kind of underwhelming in the second one too. Mrs. Loomis, the mother of Billy Loomis, she's basically seeking revenge against Sidney for killing her son. Hired this dude Mickey to start killing people, and Mickey was like a classmate. I expected more with this, you know? So for me, Scream 2 gets a 6 out of 10. And now for the worst one, and this is the worst one on a lot of people's lists, for numerous reasons. That's right, the worst one on my list goes to Scream 3. But this time, the victims of Ghostface are the people that are doing this adaptation of the Scream events in Stab 3 or 4, I forget which one they were doing. There's a lot of good cameos and supporting cast. Parker Posey, who's been in a ton of films. You have a cameo by Carrie Fisher. I mean, how cool is that? Patrick Dempsey, McDreamy, is in this film, and he's a completely forgettable character. I don't even really remember what his purpose was in the movie. Oh, also, it's worth noting that the original accused killer who supposedly killed Sidney's mom back in the day is Liev Schreiber, the guy who played Sabretooth and a bunch of other iconic roles. And oh my god, one of the cringiest parts of this movie is where Sidney is having dreams of her mother haunting her, and she comes up in the window and she's talking in this ghostly way, and it's like, oh, it's some of the worst acting I've seen in a film. Worse than David Arquette. At this point for me, the concept in Scream 3 and all these movies is getting old pretty quick. Like, at least reinvent it. Do it in a different place. Something. At least with Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, like, the themes were different. Even if they were cheesy, the kills were cool and iconic. They had a great quotable dialogue in those movies. This movie to me is trying to be like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and I, believe it or not, I didn't really like that film at all either. I don't think there was a moment in this film that I really took it seriously. Any glimmer of hope, like Dewey trying to kill Ghostface with his gun, and he just trips and falls down the hill like a bumbling idiot. Ghostface himself, I mean, he was decent in this film. At least he had cloaking tech now where he could disguise his voice as other people. The kills weren't even really iconic. I mean, the only one I can think of is the part where Ghostface is on the phone with one of the guys and he's just like, oh, you left the gas on or something like that, and he blows up inside the whole entire house. I didn't see that coming. And at the end of the movie, Ghostface was revealed this to be one of like the director dudes or something like that, and it just felt really cheap to me. But then I found out the original ending. So apparently Matthew Lillard's character was supposed to survive from the first film, and he was supposed to be the one heading everything up, like recruiting these Ghostface killers throughout 1, 2, and 3. And I would have loved that, like a cult essentially of Ghostface killers, and he was the one heading it up. What a cool idea. But apparently what happened was something to do with like I think it was Columbine, and they didn't want to do the film in bad taste of him recruiting school students like that. So understandable. Fine. Shit happens. If I were to rank this one, I mean, it's still not a horrible film, but for me, I just don't think it's as rewatchable. Scream 3 gets a 5 out of 10. So there's my little ranking here, guys. I did this in anticipation for Scream 5 that was recently announced. I know David Arquette's coming back. I guess we'll just see how his acting is in that. Matthew Lillard said he would definitely be interested. They would have to bring him back in a cool way. Like I said, my thought would be throughout all these movies, kind of similar to what they were going to do at the end of Scream 3, that he's been recruiting people, and they'll show a scene with like a cult of Ghostface followers and stuff like that, and all of the people in the original movies like Rory and Roman and Sydney's boyfriend in the first film, all these people were secretly part of this cult and they couldn't reveal it at all. And whether it's Matthew Lillard that was the head of this cult or if they go with someone else, I would love to see like the supreme Ghostface, like the main one. Make it a different story. You don't have to bring back all of these OG characters. You can make it its own contained film. I hope David Arquette's really just in it for a cameo. Give me some iconic kills. The world is filled with technology. Evolve Ghostface somehow. Use like, I don't know if found footage would necessarily work. I think they'll probably try to stray away from that because that time has really passed with horror films. Iconic kills and quotable movie lines in this next installment, please. Who knows when it's going to come around because of this pandemic, but either way, in a nutshell, this franchise is something that I enjoy, but I'm not as psyched about as I am with Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, but Ghostface is still an iconic killer. We can't kid ourselves. So what's your rankings and predictions for Scream 5? Let me know in the comments below, and as always guys, thanks for watching.